Hello everyone, welcome back. In this video I'm going to talk about AWS Step function service in which we create state machines, and that is used to create distributed applications using visual workflows. So in this video I'm going to cover what are step functions, how do you create a state machine, how do you create a state machine role, then we'll try to understand how step function definition looks like and how do you create one. Then we will look at some of the CI/CD changes needed to set up the step function, and then finally we'll see a demo related to the web application that we are trying to build using AWS Serverless architecture. So let's move on to the AWS service. So on the console you can just type step functions and you can go to the step functions service, and once you go there you can see the state machines that have been created. So I've already created a state machine that is currently working. We'll get to this in some time, but for now let's go to the start page and I'll show you what it actually does. So like I said before, AWS Step Functions is a service that is used to build distributed applications using visual workflows, and you can see there's an example that they have given here. So you have a start state, then it transitions to a fetch and order state, then you have a choice state in which you can either create an order or could result in not creating any order based on the region that you select. So if the region that the user is selecting is serviceable, then it goes to a new state called create order A or create order B, or if it is non-serviceable, then it goes to an unserviceable region state. And if the order is created, then we move to a state called order OK, and if the order is OK, it goes to process order and then it ends. And if there is any issue or error in creating the order, or if the region is unserviceable, then it goes to a state called no order possible, then it again goes to end, right? So state machine basically consists of such states, and you can transition from one state to another depending on your business logic, and that's how your web application is built. So we will see an example of how exactly a step function works and how we can leverage that to use in the web application that we have been developing so far. Let's go back to our slide and see what we can do next. Alright, so we saw what are step functions. Let's go ahead and see how we can create a state machine. So let's just click on get started, and you can see it gives you option to create a state machine. So you can enter the name, let's call it test ABC, the name does not matter. Then comes the IAM role. Now this is the role that lets your step function or state machine execute business logic for you. So depending on what you want your state machine to do, you need to provide your role accordingly. So you can either choose an existing role or you can provide a role ARN yourself. So I will show you now how you can create a role that your step function or state machine can use. So go to roles and click on create role, and inside this you want to select step function. So click on step function and just click on next permission. And now you want to select a single role that will be displayed here, which is AWS Lambda role, and you can see it says default policy for AWS Lambda service role, right? So you can click on this and you can see the policy summary or the JSON that it has, and you can see that it provides permission to invoke any of the Lambda resources, right? So you can see the Lambda is Lambda invoke function and the resource is asterisk, so it allows to invoke any Lambda that is there. So next, click on next review and give a name, and you can just select create role, and that should be created. And if you see I already have a role that is in place. You can just type step here and you can see there's a step function role, and it has the same thing, AWS Lambda role, that we saw some time back. So I have already created this role, and if you go back to the state machine that I already have, then it would have the same role that I'll show you in some time. But the idea is that you give name, you give the IAM role that your state machine can use, and then finally you have state machine definition. Now we will see the state machine definition in detail in some time, but this is where the state machine definition goes, and this is the visual representation of your state machine. So let's go back to state machines and open the state machine that I have created, and you can see in this you have an ARN, you have the role. Again, you can see that the role is step function role that we saw in the IAM section, which is this, and you can see that there is a definition here that we will see in some time, and there is a visual workflow right over here. And on the executions tab, you can see that there are some executions that are running, and we will see a demo of this shortly, but you can see all the executions that are running here. And if you click on the executions, you can actually see the visual workflow of how the state machine executes. In this case, it went to eval upload, then it went to process PNG file, it actually executed, and then it went to do cleanup. So I will show how this is actually working in some time, but as I said before, it gives you a visual representation of how step functions work. So let's see what's next. So we saw how to create a state machine. We also saw how to create a state machine role. So let's try to understand step function definition. So for this, I'm going to go to the code, and I'm going to show you how the state function code looks like. So if you go to step functions and go to file upload processor.json, let me go from the starting. So this is how the step function definition looks like. So you have a comment which is fine. So its comment is just a description about the step function. So this step function processes file upload to S3 in AWS Serverless demo. Then you have basically bunch of states, and then you define how a state is transitioned to other state and what business logic drives it. So as this state machine, it says starts at eval upload. So eval upload is a state, and our state machine will start at this particular phase. And then we have list of states that are all the possible states that a state machine can transition to. So the first state that we are going to look is eval upload, and you can see it is type task. Again, you have comment, you have input path, you have result path, then you have resource. Now this resource is pointing to a lambda which is called eval upload, and when this state is executed, this is the lambda that gets executed. Now input path and result path determine what is the input to this lambda and what should be exposed as the result of this particular lambda, right? And the next is the next phase that will transition from this particular state. So eval upload is the first state where it starts at, and once it is successful, it will go to process all file types, which is the second state. And there's a retry logic that we have added. So if there is any error in the execution of this particular state, then it just tries to or retry maximum of one number of time with a 30 seconds delay. Right, so that was the first phase, which is eval upload. Then it goes to a second state, which is called process all file types, and you can see its type is parallel, unlike type as task, which was eval upload. Now parallel type task, you create parallel tasks that can run in parallel. So you can see there are branches. There must be 3 branches associated with the parallel state. So one is process JPG file, the other is process PNG file choice, and the third one is process GIF file choice. So what we essentially want is, depending on the type of file that is uploaded, we want one of this branch of the state machine to proceed. So in this particular state, which is process all file types, which is of parallel type, the first state is process JPG file choice, and you can see that this particular branch starts at process JPG file choice, and it has two states. One is process JPG file choice, and the other is process JPG file. And process JPG file choice is the first state that this branch executes, and again the type of process JPG file choice is choice, which means it decides which state it should transition to. So finally it says if the $.result.isJPG, so as you can see from the previous output path $.result is the result part. So if $.result.is JPG is true, then it goes to a next state, which is process JPG file. And if that is false, which means that the uploaded file is not JPG, then it just goes to a state called done JPG. And you can see that done JPG state is just says type as succeeded, which essentially will terminate this particular branch and it will go ahead. Now similarly, we have process PNG file where we have two states. It starts with process PNG file choice, and again if result.png is true, it will go to process PNG file, which is the next state. And if the boolean flag is false, it will just go to a state called done PNG, which is type succeeded, which will terminate this branch, right? And similarly, if let's say the flag is true, it executes a new stage which has a resource defined, which is again a lambda, which is process PNG. So that's what it does. And similarly, we have it for a GIF as well. So we have 3 branches, and then finally we have a do cleanup state. So if you see, go back to the states, you can see that this branches gets terminated here. So this particular state, which is parallel, once that is executed, it transitions to a next state called do cleanup. And do cleanup will basically try to do any cleanup that is required. And again, it's type as task, and the resource is a lambda. It will get executed when this do cleanup state is reached. So now that you know what this definition is doing, I'm going to show you how it actually works. So let's go to a definition. This is the same thing that we saw some time back. So you can see there's a start function, then you have an eval upload stage, and then we saw there are 3 parallel branches that it runs. And depending on the choice, whether process JPG file choice is true, it will either go to process JPG file or it will go to done JPG. Similarly, process PNG file choice will check if the uploaded file is PNG file, then it will go to process PNG file, else it will go to done PNG state, which just terminates this branch. Similarly for GIF, if the uploaded file is GIF, the process GIF file state gets executed, else it will go to a state called done GIF, which will again terminate this branch. And once these branches are done, it will execute another task, which is do cleanup, and it will just end, right? So in terms of the web application that we are creating, the way this is going to work is whenever we upload a file to our S3, that is going to trigger a lambda, and that lambda will trigger this particular state function. And this state function will first execute eval upload, which will basically check what type of file is uploaded depending on its extension, and it will set some of the result parameters, and depending on the result parameters, one of these branches will get executed. And we will see that in some time how it actually gets executed. You can go to my GitHub repository, which is under Aniket91 AWS _serverless, and you can see all of the code is committed here. So if you go inside step functions, you can see there's a file upload process.json, and this is the file that I just showed you. So you can take a look at it here. So let's go back to our step function, and let me show you how the demo works. Okay, so for this to work, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to S3. So in S3, we are going to see the bucket in which we have the GIF files uploaded that we have used to pull and show it in our web application. So I believe that was 8 hardcore test, and you can see that there are some of the files that are here. So let me just go ahead and delete a few, and let's go ahead and delete them. So once this files are uploaded here, this will going to trigger a lambda, which let me go ahead and show you. So you can go to properties, you can go to events, and you can add an event here. So to do that, you can just say add notification, you can say object created all, you can give prefix or suffix if you want it, and then send to, you can select to invoke a lambda or send an SNS notification or a queue, and you can select the lambda that you want to invoke. So I have already done that. So you can see if it is object created all, then it will to notify to lambda, and if you click on this and click on edit, you can see it invokes a lambda called start step function. And if you go to our lambda functions and go to start step function, That is basically this. So all it does is it basically notes down the bucket and the key that is received from the event of the upload that AWS S3 sends us, and it will just start the state machine. It reads the state machine ARN from the environment variables, and it passes all the parameters to step function dot start execution method, and you have a callback that we have defined which will tell us if there is an error or not. But essentially this piece of code gets the event notification from S3, and then it tries to start the state machine. Now once that state machine is started, let's go back to our state machine and let's go to the definition and see how it works. So once the state machine is started, you can see that the first state that it goes is eval upload, which is this particular state, and you can see that eval upload is of type task, and the resource is function eval upload, right? So which is nothing but a lambda. So you can go to eval upload. So this is another lambda, and you can see what it does. It basically again notes down the bucket and key that is sent when we are starting the notification. And once we have noted that down, we are basically setting certain flags to decide whether the uploaded file is a JPG, PNG or GIF. So we are setting it as false, and then depending on what the extension is, we are selectively setting the flag to true. And finally we are calling the callback with the result, which is JPG, PNG or GIF. Now you should note that the source bucket and source key is something that is transferred to us by the start step function lambda. So if you go back to start step function lambda, you can see that it says param.input as input, and input.source bucket is bucket, and input.source key is key. Now this is something that is passed down to the step function when it is invoked, and that's what we get in eval upload. So you can see the source bucket and source key is from the same event that we just invoked step function from, and all of this is set and it is passed on to the next state. Now if you go back to step functions, you can see that the input path is dollar, which basically means that all of the input that is passed to the step function will be sent to this lambda, whereas the result part is $.result, right? So this essentially means that whatever result is passed down to this lambda will be mapped to $.result, right? So $.result will be mapped to the result that we are passing here. So $.result.isJPC will be this flag, $.result.isPNG will be this flag, right? And this is exactly what we are using in the next parallel branch as well. So if you see, this is a choice branch, and this checks whether the result.isJPG is true. If that is the case, that goes to process JPG file, else it goes to a state which just marks it as done and terminates the branch. And that's how the whole flow works. So let me go ahead and quickly show you how one of the flow works. So let's say the process JPG file or isJPG file flag is true, then it will go to process JPG file state. Again, this is of type task, and that executes a function called process JPG. So if you go to process JPG and index.html, it essentially does nothing but print certain console files which say starting processing of JPG bucket, and then it just ends it, and then it makes a callback using JPG process finished, right? So similar logic has been implemented in GIF as well as PNG. And finally, all of this is done. You can see the last state is the do cleanup one, and do cleanup maps to post process cleanup. And again, this is nothing complicated here. It just prints starting cleanup and ending cleanup, and this is just to show you how step functions work. So let's go back to our S3 console, go to overview, let me click on upload, and let me click on maybe fox.jpg, open and upload. And if you go to executions, you can see that there will be one more execution that should get started. Yeah, there we go. You can see that it is already running, and if you click on it, you can see that upload and process the JPG file. For PNG and GIF, that flags would have been set to false, so it directly went to the done state, whereas in JPG file it went to process JPG file. And you can actually see the input and output of each state. So if you click on eval upload, you can see that the input was source bucket and source key, which was used to start this step function, and the output was result. Like I said before, a result is mapped to the output of this particular state. So you can see bucket key is JPG, is PNG, is GIF is set to the corresponding values. Now if you go to process JPG file, you can see that the input is this and the output is this. Similarly, if you go to process JPG file, you can see that the output is process JPG processing finished, which we saw some time back, right? Similarly, for do cleanup, you can see that the output is cleanup completed. So you can click on any one of them and you can see what is the input and output of the corresponding state and how it actually works. And this actually gives you a nice representation of how the step function is working, right? And you can actually see the logs here for each of the executions. So if you go ahead and see eval upload and go to the CloudWatch logs for eval upload, you can see actually the log, some of the logs that we have printed in that code. So let's just wait for it to load and we can see what it is printing. So let's go to the latest one, and you can see some of the logs that it has printed, which was author, the bucket key, and the file name, which is fox.jpg, which is how it decided it should transition to JPG branch instead of PNG and GIF branch, right? So I hope step functions is making much more sense now, right? So you could have more complicated workflows here. You could have an error handling which takes care of error reporting for you. Before we move on to the CI/CD part of this, I just wanted to tell you one more thing. So if you go to start step function and go to index.js, you can see that the parameters that start execution API takes is the input, which is nothing but the parameters that is sent to the step function. It also takes state machine ARN, which is the ARN of the step function or the state machine that you want to run. It also optionally takes a name parameter that you can use to set the name of the state machine. So that is something that you will see here. So since I have not given the name, you can see that AWS generates one for you. But if you think that you can generate a name which is unique, which will help you identify the state machine execution, then you should go ahead and use it. But you need to keep in mind that the name is unique, so you cannot have two executions in a state machine that have same name, right? So if you use a same name in the state machine execution, then if the state machine is that particular state machine is still running, you will get a response from that particular state machine execution. However, if that state machine execution is already completed, then you will get an error saying that the state machine execution exists, right? And this constraint remains for 90 days for per region. So you can use a state machine name only once in 90 days in a particular region, right? So you need to keep that in mind. So finally, let's go ahead and take a look at the CI/CD part of it. So again, I had already covered most of the CI/CD part in one of the previous videos. So I have just added all of these lambdas to it. So if you go to node lambdas.sh, you can see that the new lambdas that we have added here have just been added to this scripts as well. And if you go to build spec, you can see that it executes node lambda.sh, which basically builds and zips all the new lambdas that we have created. And then CloudFormation templates have been updated to reflect all the new lambdas. So eval upload, process JPG, process PNG, process GIF, do cleanup. So all of these lambdas have been added in CI/CD. Similarly, in step function, I have added corresponding lambda ARNs. So when this state machine is created, you should have a fully functional state machine that you can use to demo. Just note that all the lambdas are deployed as part of the code pipeline that we have created, but creation of step function or state machine is still a manual process. So you need to deploy all the lambdas and then manually create this state machine. However, if you want to automate deployment of state machines as well, you can do that as well. So you can create another resource in your CloudFormation template with the step function type of resource, and then you can go ahead and create it. Again, it would need some more inputs like the Lambda ARNs that you want to create. So you would need to actually deploy all the Lambdas first and then get the output from those Lambdas as the ARNs, and then use it in the step function resource. So it was a bit complicated for this demo, so I'm skipping it for now. Maybe I will cover it in the subsequent videos, but that's how the CI/CD works as of now, and maybe we'll come to a more automated way to deploy Lambdas as well as step functions in the future videos. Okay, so we have seen all of this things. We saw what step functions are, we saw how to create a state machine, we saw how to create a state machine role that is needed to create a state machine. Then we understood how step function definition works, what are parallel branches, how transitions happen from one state to another. Then we saw some of the CI/CD changes needed for the step function, and finally we saw a demo to see how the step function actually works. So let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Thank you.